So I'm doing a part two of this building in Los Angeles that is going to have a mass eviction. And evictions are happening all over the city, but it, without fail, has increased. I feel like it has increased because of after the moratorium was lifted, after they had declared the pandemic coming to somewhat of an end, which I really don't believe it's come to an end because people are still in the hospital. People can still catch things and get ill and die. People make an educated guess whether they're going to wear a mask or not in certain places they feel are high traffic areas with people who may be sick. I just believe that it got out of control, the COVID, and they knew that they couldn't control it. And now it's left into the hands of the people to make a wise decision. Should you or should you not wear a mask, whether you're in belief of it or disbelief. And so now here we are, the moratorium. I can't say to you how many landlords and tenants have battled back and forth over those issues with the moratorium and rent relief. And some people still haven't received their rent relief. Some people had received it. Maybe it wasn't enough. Some people were promised they were going to get monies and they still got evicted. Well, this is an unusual situation. I last reported about mobile home evictions, which I was thinking that would be unheard of, but apparently it is a thing, and it is starting to increase everywhere in different places, cities. These evictions have gotten so far out of hand, and they're using the Ellis Act and different tricks with lawyers, tactics to try to basically move people out and displace people. And a lot of it, I believe, is to do upgrades so that they can get market rate rent or maybe higher rents, raise the rents in a lot of these units. And so this is the case with this building. This building is in West LA, and there's many articles, multiple articles. So I'm reading from one of the articles, another one that's in the LA Times, and this is by Roger Benson. And so this is a large complex, and it was built in the 1960s, and it's going to evict all of its tenants. Nobody is to be left behind. And in the background, I'm sure you see that it's a large building. I know you see the person's face. He's the person that is over this whole project, and it sounds like it's going to take years to complete. So the article reads that it's a fire plagued apartment complex, and it's going to remove all the tenants so that they can retrofit sprinklers in the building. So the name of the building is called the Barrington Plaza. It has 3 buildings in LA, apartment complex that was built in the 1960s to evict all its tenants, some of whom have lived there for decades in rent-stabilized units. And its landlord can install fire sprinklers. And so his name is Douglas Emmett, and it goes by Douglas Emmett Inc. And so I believe that's him in the photograph, if you can see it. Because the last video, I kind of briefed over it, and I wasn't able to pull up his photo, but this is him. So the owners of the Barrington Plaza, an aging LA apartment complex with a record of life-threatening fires, said Monday that they had planned to evict all of the tenants to make way for the sprinkler retrofit that cost more than $300 million, and it takes several years to complete. So the landlord, Douglas Emmett Inc., notified the city officials that it will withdraw all 712 units in the Barrington Plaza from the rental market under what is known as the Ellis Act. So the state law allows landlords to remove tenants from rent-stabilized units if their building is removed from the rental market. So you guys, anybody out there that is listening, do your homework on these laws and the Ellis Act and some of these things that are happening. I don't really believe that it is fair, because a lot of people are going to be affected by this mass eviction event, which I was reading a number of articles surrounding this situation, and it said that they need people to start relocating as soon as September. And that is the people who are not disabled or elderly, but the people who are disabled and elderly may be able to stay up until May, is what I'm hearing. So there could be other versions of this, because it's, slowly developing and coming out. But this is supposed to be the largest, one of the largest evictions, mass evictions that is going to take place relatively soon. So it is expected to be one of the largest mass evictions in the city in recent years, affecting 577 occupied units, some of which house tenants who have lived there for the property for decades under rent controls that keep their monthly payments below a market rate. Residents were notified on Monday of this planned closure, and tenants' rights advocate Larry Gross of the Coalition of Economic Survival said Douglas Emmett should have planned to temporarily relocate tenants and allow them to return to their rent control units when repairs are complete. But it doesn't sound like this is happening. So this is what the argument is between the tenant and the landlord, that he really wants to do these renovations because he wants to raise the rents and get all of the low-paying tenants out, basically. And this doesn't sound unfamiliar. A lot of units have been targeted with the same ideas, using that same Ellis Act. So it goes on to say that there are long-term tenants who are going to end up being displaced and will have to pay much higher rents in the future, he said, so they won't be able to find comparable housing in the neighborhood or even in the city. And I'm adding something in there. A couple of years back, they used to have you fill out an application. You paid your application fee, and they didn't ask you for 2 and 3 times the rent. Now, they want you to make not 2, but 3 times the rent in some of these units. And the rent is extremely high, and some of the lowest rent might start off at $2,000 a month, and it could go as high as $4,000 to $6,000 a month in certain units, depending on the amenities that you have. If you have washer and dryer, self-cleaning stove, or if you have racquetball or a gym, or if you have even just having a garage, they charge you for a lot of different things that seem very unfair to people, and it makes the quality of living unlivable because it's economically not reasonable for people who are low income status. So the complex at Wilshire Boulevard and Barrington Avenue in LA Sawtelle neighborhood will be returned to the rental market when the upgrades are complete, the landlord said. So there's no date as of yet set, that there are no provisions for tenants to return to the unit. So that is what the whole fight is over. So current tenants may have as long as a year to move out, and that is in the case of the elderly and disabled occupants who could receive the higher amount of $22,000 in financial assistance for relocation, the landlord said. The relocation expense payments for tenants who have lived in a building for less than 3 years will be like $9,200. And I'll just tell you that it might be first and last. It's not enough to pay a full month's carry you out for 2-3 months of rent. It might carry you maybe a month. And so, because you gotta get groceries and you gotta, turn on your utilities. You might have to pay utilities depending on where the place is. There might be other laundry list of other expenses that you have. When you're relocating from one place to another, you have to hire movers and who knows what else. So it goes on to say that it may be used for the cost of the first and last month's rent, and security deposits, and moving fees, and the dollar amounts follow the city eviction guidelines. So due to the high turnover, most tenants are currently paying market rate rent, and the landlord has said this. So the 3-tower complex was built in the 1960s, which puts it in a group of 55 residential towers. So in LA, that are exempt from the laws requiring sprinklers that are triggered by fire. So sprinklers are mandated in most apartment buildings, but the city has maintained an exemption for high-rise built between 1943 to 1974. So among them are condominium buildings occupied by owners who have resisted the expense of adding sprinklers. So the lack of sprinklers at the Barrington Plaza provided dangerous it wasn't in the 19s, but the 2013s, year of 2013, when one of its 3 towers had caught a fire, displacing 125 residents. So a fire erupted again in the same 25-story structure known as a Tower A in 2020. So a 19-year-old man died and 13 people were injured, including a 3-month-old baby and 2 firefighters. So 8 floors in the building were red tagged by the city inspectors as unsafe to occupy and remain vacant. So that's probably the other reason, because he's losing money because he's not able to occupy those units because of the incident that happened. And there is a photograph showing a plume of flames and smoke coming out of one of the buildings. And this was Tower A. So I will put the title of this article in this video so that you can pull it up and see the photo, the still photo of the flames and how it looks. And a man, literally, he's crawling on the side of the building trying to escape. So, however, you have people in the building that have been there for decades, and they're not making the market rate rent with their income. So it is going to be very difficult for them to find somewhere else to live. And it says, although the city does not require Barrington Plaza and other residential towers of its era to perform sprinkler retrofits, the city officials did make approval of Barrington Plaza's planned repairs from the 2020 fire contingent on upgrading the safety standards of all units. We understand that the impact removing all Barrington Plaza rental units from the market will have on our tenants. And Douglas Emmett, chief executive, Jordan Kaplan, said in a statement, unfortunately, this is the only way to comply with the city directives and to install fire sprinklers and other life safety improvements throughout the towers following the January 2020 fire that occurred in the past. So Barrington Plaza will have relocation specialists available at the property who can provide individualized tenant support and aid in locating and viewing moving into new residences, the landlord said. So there will be also a telephone hotline to answer tenant questions. So although almost 75% of the residents have been at Barrington for less than 3 years, we have some residents that have been there for over 20 years, so two decades, and we want to make sure that this process is seamless as possible for them, so Kaplan said. So that is why we are going far and beyond the Ellis Act requirements by providing individualized relocation support tailored to the specific circumstances of each tenant. So sounds good, but that doesn't sound like it's fitting well with the tenants, because they have agreed as a class action lawsuit to go against what this landlord or this owner has put in place. So a lot of them don't want to move, I'm hearing, and they feel that they should be allowed to stay there because of the fact that it would be a lot harder to find other places to live. And, they probably have work, family, school, different things going on in that community and that they've been a part of for like more than 20 years. And to uproot themselves would be pretty devastating. So that is one of the largest complexes on the west side, he said, and its rent-controlled units will be lost forever if they use the Ellis Act. And so that is pretty much the rest of the complete rest of the article. Yeah, and so I thought it was sad to hear that because it's not only happening in this building, it's happening all over California, all over the city of Los Angeles County. And outside of LA, outside of California, I'm hearing in other areas it is happening ever since that moratorium was lifted. And you hear these mass evictions just happening all over the place. And they're using this Ellis Act to aid in this. And this right here, to use the sprinklers, which they probably should have done this years ago. I don't know. Why now, that you take it serious after the COVID, after, I guess, because the moratorium, a lot of the landlords, they were meeting and they were meeting with lawyers trying to figure out ways to keep people out. I can understand if people are nuisance tenants or they're bad at, they took advantage and weren't paying rent. But people who are doing what they're supposed to do, or they don't make enough money for anything else but the rent that they are used to paying, I feel that this is wrong. There has to be another way because it is displacing people and you're now uprooting them from something that they've always known. And in the case of the elderly people, it may seem like a whole lot of money, $22,000, but if you're not making that kind of money every year, you're going to go through and blow through that money relatively quick because you have to house yourself, feed yourself. You got to find places to live. They're going to shoot you with they're going to shoot off these words or questions with application fees and that it's non-refundable and that you can't pay it back. And each place you look for, they want you to pay an application fee. And there's a lot of scam artists out there now who they show you an apartment, but you're never going to get in it. And then you have to divvy up what are you going to pay? Which apartment are you going to go ahead and pay an application fee for? Because it's not guaranteed that you're going to be the one to get the apartment. So it's just as competitive as like when people are bidding on a house. It's like a racket out there. People are competing for who's going to move into an apartment. And who's going to be able to show up with the money and who's going to be able to pass all of the little background checks. So it's a lot of things that are involved in all of that. And if you're used to 20 years ago, what was the rent? Oh my gosh, it is so much expensive now since then. So just to think about that, that's one to think about. Yeah, this is bad. This is all the way around, it's bad. So, and on that, leaving it on that note, I'll just, this is part 2 of the Sawtell apartment mass eviction event that is going to take place. I wonder, is Karen Bass, I don't know if she's over that district, she may not be, but I wonder is she going to somehow intervene in this, or if they're going to have somebody else intervene in this. I know they said they're going to have like people that are going to try to help each person case by case. But believe me, the rents the way they are now, and you got people who are paying what they paid 20 years ago, and they were always paying that. I just don't know how this could be acceptable or even doable at this point.